see you on the camel. There's Steven on a camel. Okay, this video is not at all about a camel.
No, we're not talking about a camel anymore. Stop. Cut. So today, that at least when we heard about it, when we started our childbirth, I don't know where I'm going. Hold on.
When we started our childbirth. Did you go through childbirth too?
No. Okay. So this week we're going to talk about, what's that face?
Sorry.
Does this bring back memories? You know what we're going to talk about.
I feel slap happy at this point. I'm just tired.
So this week we're going to talk about a topic that, at least for us, was a little bit taboo or scary when we first started thinking about having kids, and that was this idea of getting pitosin. And Katie was really set on doing natural childbirth, and the thought was that if you have pitosin,
forget it.
Yeah, forget it. So that's not true, and we're going to tell you about, Katie's going to tell you about her experience.
Yeah, so a lot of people kind of warned us, oh, if you want to have a natural childbirth, meaning a childbirth without drugs, without any pain medicine, then make sure that you avoid an induction. Whatever you do, just avoid it. So we just want to share with you, we've had 3 children now. All 3 of them, I went to the hospital intending to have a natural childbirth. I ended up having natural childbirth for my 2nd and my 3rd. For my 1st, I actually ended up getting an epidural. With the 2 that I had naturally, I actually had to have pitosin in order to start my labor. I had to have an induction. So while a lot of people said that that's scary and I should just put it out of my mind that anybody could do it, I did it. And I think it was a pretty great experience. So I want to share how I got through it, what strategies we used, and what it's like. So with our daughter Clara, she's our oldest, we went into the hospital because my water broke. I love this story actually because it's related to my company, but I actually had just submitted the LLC license for my business. I was kind of bouncing on one of those rubber round yoga balls, using it as an office chair, and I literally hit send, and I stood up from hitting send and my water broke. So it was really this like exciting way to start labor. It's like, okay, call daddy, call Steven, call my mom, call my doctor, tell everybody that this is happening, and let's go to the hospital. And with her, my water broke at probably like 10 a.m. in the morning. I was checked into the hospital by 2:30. I went into triage. They said, yes, your water broke, and they whisked me away to our room. But labor contractions didn't really start really heavily until probably like 5 o'clock or so, and I was doing laps around the labor and delivery unit trying to get things started. So anyway, by 5 o'clock, 5:30, contractions were really starting to pick up. By like 6:37, I was like kicking everybody out of my room because like your parents were there and my sister, like other people were there, and we were like, okay, thanks for coming. This is getting real. You need to go. And by 8 p.m. or 8:30, contractions were so intense that I was really miserable. And at that point, I started feeling like, oh my gosh, this is so intense. I need to push. Like maybe I'm fully dilated and ready to push. And the nurse checked me, and I was only at 2 or 3 centimeters and 90% effaced. Looking back on that experience, what I know now about labor that I didn't know for my first, I totally think I could have pushed through it if I had a different mindset. Because actually I didn't understand at that time that to be that effaced, my body was doing a whole lot of work.
Yeah, well, everyone talks about dilation. So everyone talks about how many centimeters dilated you are, not about how much your body's working as you do the effacement.
Yeah, so if I would have mentally understood, like, wow, no wonder these contractions are so tough. Like, my body's working super hard. I'm almost fully effaced, and then my body can start dilating more rapidly. If I would have understood that, I probably would have pushed through, but mentally, that just totally defeated me, and I was like, that's it, I want an epidural. I got my epidural. Our daughter was born at 2:13 a.m. on January 7th, 2015. And yeah, and it was fine. It was wonderful. There were parts of that labor that were really lovely. Like I was talking and laughing as we're like getting ready to push, and it's just a very different.
You could take a nap.
Yeah, I took a nap actually up until the time that they were like, okay, you're fully dilated, ready to push. I was like, all right, let's do it. So there are definitely benefits to having an epidural in that regard. Yeah. But going into my second pregnancy with our son Bryce, I was really excited to go natural.
Yeah. So your water broke this time as well.
Yes.
And so that's what kicked everything off. You called me, you called your mom, went through the whole routine. We went into the hospital.
Can I say too really quickly? It was again in a funny business situation. So I was on a conference call in Joseph Beth bookstores, and my mom was there with our daughter Clara, who was only 14 months at the time because we had Irish twins basically. And anyway, I was sitting there on the conference call, and all of a sudden my water broke there in Joseph Beth while I'm doing a business call. So that was pretty funny too. Like both of my first labors started in a business context. So that was, I just like that story.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, so we're there at the hospital.
Yeah, so we go to the hospital and everything
Similar
starts.
timeline, like it was like 11:30 or noon that my water broke. We got into the hospital by like 2 or 3 p.m. And then nothing happened.
Yeah, it continued to drag on. We kept on getting things checked, and you didn't progress at all.
Yeah,
and so
I was probably like 1 or 2 centimeters dilated when I went in, so that was a little different. With my daughter, I think I was like 1 centimeter when my water broke, and then everything picked up on its own. But yeah, with our son, my second, it was I probably went in at a 1 or a 2.
Yeah.
And then yeah, we tried pacing around the L&D unit, and nothing was happening.
Yeah. So the doctor came in and said, you know what, we probably need to do an induction. And Katie was still, completely had her wherewithal, and we had our friend Sarah there as a nurse, and who really encouraged Katie.
Yeah.
And so the decision was made that, you know what, we're okay with the induction, but we don't want to do it at night because we don't want to start this whole process after a full day of being exhausted. So we actually challenged the doctor a little bit and said, can we wait till the morning? And so in the morning, you actually got induced at what, like 6?
No, actually it was later. It was later? Maybe like, I want to say it was like 11.
Was it really?
Pretty late. I was really pushing them off. So the one thing to share with this one is, we really were nervous to do, I was really nervous to do Pitosin. I had actually taken an online natural childbirth class through Mama Natural, which I highly recommend. I'll link it in the description box below if you're interested in having a natural childbirth. There are parts of it that get a little too extreme in my opinion, but it really laid a super solid foundation of strategies to use during natural childbirth. And emotionally and mentally, I think it's the thing that got me through it. Anyhow, so I was really reluctant about Pitosin because in that course and in a lot of the videos you watch on YouTube and the women that you speak with in real life, they talk about how Pitosin makes it horrible, like your contractions are going to be awful. And so when my doctor was pushing us to start Pitosin at like 2 in the morning, I was really, really reluctant to do it. And something that I learned in the course that I think has helped us in childbirth experiences, but I think we'll carry it with us for any kind of medical need that arises in our lives, is they talk about taking it through the brain. And that stands for, what are the benefits? What are the risks? What are the alternatives? What does my intuition tell me? And then, is it an option to say no or not now? They basically talk, it's a strategy that you can use. And you kind of start by saying to the doctor, is this an emergency or do we have time to talk? Because obviously if they're like, we need to rush you into a C-section, and you're like, let's take it through the brain, doctor, they might be like, no, this is an emergency. So anyway, in this situation, the doctor was like, yes, we have time to talk. And so I was able to ask those questions about benefits and risks, and we talked about it.
Yep.
And the doctor wasn't happy with me, I will say. I had to advocate for myself in that moment, and I love the doctors, my OB group, I love them. I think they're fantastic. But they were like, when your water breaks, we want to get this baby out within 24 hours because of the increased risk of infection. So I didn't want to be stupid. I didn't want to have increased risk of infection. But I did ask, can we wait till the morning? And he said yes. So reluctantly, but he did say yes. So we went to sleep, or tried to sleep on and off. I was still having contractions sporadically. But anyway, Pitocin started at about 10:30 or 11, and my contractions picked up around 11:30. One thing I'll say that we did differently than maybe the average hospital is we took Pitocin on a 1-by-1 unit basis. So right now a lot of hospitals are doing a 2-by-2, which means they increase it by 2 milliunits every 30 minutes or so.
Something like that.
They keep the pace really fast, which means that once you start Pitocin, once you start feeling those contractions that happen with Pitocin, you start feeling them faster and stronger and harder if you're going at a 2-by-2 than if you did what I did, which was a 1-by-1. So that's something else to try to ask about is, hey, can we take this slow because I want to try to do this without an epidural. And if you kind of express it that way to the nurse and the doctor, maybe they'll listen to your desires. So in our case, that worked because I have an awesome best friend who's an OB nurse who is always there for us, or a labor and delivery nurse, and she helped advocate for us for that. So we had that for both our second and our third children, and that really helped me get through the natural childbirth.
And so how long were you in labor with Pitocin from the 10:30 part?
Yeah, so they probably started about 10:30. My contractions started around 11:30. Our son was born at 5:30 p.m.
Yeah.
So
Still a pretty long process.
Yeah, about 6 hours of like active labor, where from active labor into transition and then delivering him. So for our son Bryce, the strategy I used actually was to spend a lot of time in the bathroom. It was really helpful to sit on the toilet, and every time I felt another contraction coming on, I would say to whoever was there with me, whether it was my friend Sarah, whether it was you or my mom, I would say, okay, it's coming. I'd take a deep, kind of refreshing breath, and then the contraction would start. And I would pretty much, the thing that's helped me the most has been knowing that any given contraction is probably gonna be about 4 to 6 deep breaths long. And the first breath is gonna be painful. The second breath is probably gonna be the worst. The third breath, maybe still bad if it's a really long one, but it might be letting off at that point. And then the fourth breath, you're starting to feel it go away. And by the fifth and sixth breath, you're more just trying to kind of relax again, let the baby drop down.
Yep.
Really exciting stuff.
Sometimes you get a yawn.
We're tired. We have a 3-week-old.
That's right. So we've been through a process of going with the epidural. Then we went to natural childbirth, and we had to go through a process of doing Pitocin. But in both cases, we had the water break. And then for our third, we had a totally different type of experience.
Yeah, I thought my water broke a couple of times, but it wasn't.
Nope.
Wasn't my water. Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
Well,
allegedly.
Allegedly.
There's a PP tape, allegedly. Anyway, if you watch Stephen Colbert, let us know in the comments below.
Yes. So we got to the point the due date had passed. We'd actually been to the hospital a couple of times and been released each time because the contractions had not...
just once. It was just once.
Was it just once?
Well, yeah, the one time they sent me to the office instead of the hospital.
That's right. So twice. Yeah. So... So we went twice, and then the due date came and passed, and we got to talk to the doctor, and he said, well, time for us to schedule an induction. And so this time
he gave us the option. He was like, you can keep waiting.
But we're not going to let it wait out any longer than this.
41 weeks, yeah, was their cutoff. So
we said, all right.
We scheduled for 40
Tuesday.
weeks. For 40 weeks and 3 days. Yeah. And you can watch our 40-week pregnancy update video, which we filmed the night before we went into the hospital. So watch that in addition to this one, because we talk about just how we felt about scheduling the induction, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Now, what was interesting in this particular pregnancy as opposed to the rest was that every other time you went early. Yeah. And because the water broke.
Yeah.
This time where the water didn't break, your body continued to work and work. So when you actually went in, you were already at about 90% effaced and about 2
or maybe 3 centimeters, which I think is common for, subsequent pregnancies too. Yeah.
So for Bryce's labor where we had Pitocin, it was go in midday, going all through the night. They want to start Pitocin, wait till the next morning, and then start the Pitocin. This was more like we came in the morning
8 a.m.
at 8 a.m.
Checked in well, we were a little late, 8:15 a.m. I come in with a Starbucks, and Sarah, my friend again, was like, "You can't drink that. That's a bad idea." She was totally right. I'm glad I did not drink that because things got intense really fast.
Yeah.
So we got checked in at 8 a.m. and then by 9:30 they had started the Pitocin. By 10:15, and once again, we did a 1 by 1, so 1 milliunit every half hour.
And this was
increase.
actually part of the birth plan this time. We actually communicated well that this is what we wanted.
Yes, and the doctor agreed ahead of time, so they expected that. And they kind of knew, like, she's already progressing and she's, you know, had vaginal births before. This will probably go quickly.
Yeah, and it did.
It did. So at 9:30 or so, they started the Pitocin. By 10:15 or so, I was starting to kind of be ready to sit up. So at the very beginning in early labor, I tend to want to lay on my side and just breathe. And this time I'll say, I actually listened to hypnobirthing soundtracks pretty much the whole time, all the way up until transition. So we used to laugh and joke about hypnobirthing because the lady's voice on these audio tracks is
It's great.
what will you do for your baby? She's just like very extremely mellow, extremely like Australian. and the things they say are sometimes really ridiculous, like, I eat healthy foods for my baby. I get a nourishing platter of fruits and vegetables every day for my baby.
As long as it helps you, that's all that matters.
But it helps me. It's just so relaxing. And that's what you need to do. That's the beautiful, crazy, culture shifting part of what labor is we think of strength, at least in American culture, we associate strength with clenching and being like masculine and muscular, but strength in labor is all about relaxation. It's about, can you have control over your mind? Can you feel empowered as a person? Can you feel relaxed and assured that things are okay? And the more you can relax your jaw, relax your shoulders, relax your uterus. Honestly, you have to relax your hips. That's the stuff that helps the baby move down the birth canal faster. And as hippy dippy and crunchy as that sounds, that's the honest part of it. To me, it's just a total shift from the way we think about strength, and that's what's so beautiful about it. Do you agree from the perspective of someone watching the whole thing go down?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's about making sure that you're feeling good and right with your body and that you're allowing it to go through that natural process. So the more tense that you're feeling, the harder that process is going to be. And if you relax and are comfortable, then, that's what your body's made for.
Yeah. So anyhow, by 11 a.m., I was ready to sit up. I was no longer in early labor. I was in active labor. The contractions were coming every, 4 minutes or so. And I actually tried to go to sit on the toilet, like what worked for me with my second labor. And I was like, get me out of here. I don't want this at all. This is not working for me. And Sarah actually pulled out this really cool new contraption. I don't remember.
It's like a little U seat thing.
Yeah, it was like a U-shaped inflatable seat. It was awesome. And I don't know why, but it was the perfect thing. So I sat on that. At one point, as things started picking up, Sarah put that up on the bed, and I put my belly right in the middle of the U, and I put my arms on top of it. So that was awesome as I was getting closer to the end of active labor and I was starting to go into transition. That's when things get really intense and your contractions start getting maybe like 1 minute apart if there's a break at all. So with our baby Emmalyn, Pitocin was started about 9:30. Things started getting real at 10:30. I was in active labor until probably about 12:45, 1, and then I was in transition for about 15 minutes or so. Then I probably had like a 5-minute break where my body was kind of going from transition into pushing. And then I pushed for probably about 15 minutes, and she was born at 1:39 p.m. on October 23rd.
Mole day. Just
As
reminding
Dad
everyone
planned.
again.
Yeah, again, watch our 40-week pregnant update, and he'll geek out about being a scientist with mole day.
So that was it. I mean, it's scary, it is painful, but if you understand the process, if you understand what the information that you need to know about how you can regulate the amount of pitosin that's given to you, understanding that it is going to be painful, but knowing what you're going to expect as far as how the contractions are how they're going to progress, that you can actually go through, have an induction, and still have a natural childbirth.
Yeah. So anyway, we hope this is encouraging to you and that you have a really wonderful birth experience. Of course, at the end of the day, all we care about is that sweet little baby in our arms that's healthy and that we're healthy. And
Absolutely.
That's how our story ended. And we're just so pleased to have little Miss Emmalyn in our lives. So anyway, leave your comments below, and we would love if you subscribe and follow our channel. We do toddler travel guides, and we talk about life with 3 children.
Yeah, so bye.
Bye. Where's their remote?
It's over there.
It's a good thing we have this remote.